Welcome to OnlyFacts. On today's episode, we'll explore some of the most interesting sex facts about ancient Egypt. Let's begin. Most people know ancient Egyptians practiced mummification, but the embalmers who performed the process didn't always respect the bodies. Ancient writer Herodotus recorded rumors of at least one embalmer sleeping with the corpse of a beautiful woman, which led to worries about intercourse between embalmers and the bodies of famous or particularly attractive women. People frowned upon the practice, and if colleagues discovered an embalmer was using a corpse for carnal purposes, they denounced him. According to Herodotus, to guard against necrophilia, families did not immediately surrender the bodies of deceased women who had been great beauties. Instead, the families waited a few days so the corpse would be somewhat decomposed. Like modern civilizations, ancient Egyptians wanted to have some degree of control over their family planning. It led to them creating methods of birth control. One approach detailed on ancient papyrus suggests they used gum made from acacia tree sap to cover the mouth of the womb during intercourse. And there is at least some corroboration for the effectiveness of this approach, as acacia gum contains lactic acid, a known spermicide. In another method, they applied a combination of honey and sodium bicarbonate to the inside of the vagina. Another option was a diaphragm of sorts made of crocodile dung, dates, acacia, and honey. Cleopatra's purported sexual appetite is the stuff of legend and Shakespeare. When the Romans came around, Cleopatra had an illegitimate son with Julius Caesar. Later, she became romantically linked to Mark Antony, which ended up costing her life. But when her bedchambers were empty, Cleopatra allegedly found other ways to entertain herself. Rumor has it, she filled either a hollowed-out gourd or an empty papyrus box with angry bees, then used the makeshift device as a vibrator. To be clear, the bee vibrator story has always been a rumor of unknown origin and not verifiable fact, but the theory goes that the bees swarming around inside the contraption would have caused it to vibrate and move around, making it ideal for Cleopatra's supposed purposes. Bestiality played an important role in ancient Egyptian art. Notably, Egyptian hieroglyphics dating as far back as 3000 BCE depict humans sleeping with animals. Egyptian gods and goddesses often took the shape of animals, so there was a divine connection to the idea of human-animal intercourse as drawn in the glyphs. Also, ancient Egyptians considered physical acts depicted between a human and an animal less visually offensive than the same between two humans. Most people in ancient Egypt didn't engage in incest, but Egyptian royalty and mythological gods often married and had children with their siblings. Seth and Nephthys, Osiris and Isis, and Shu and Tefnut are just a handful of the brother-sister couples from Egyptian mythology. And because royalty loves to emulate the gods, siblings ruling over Egypt frequently married one another. Unfortunately, all that intermarrying led to weak family lines with a lot of genetic defects. Scholars believe King Tut, for instance, had a degenerative bone disease, a cleft palate, and a curved spine, among other disorders. The Egyptians didn't put much emphasis on virginity. Marrying a virgin carried no significance. Premarital relations was openly practiced, and as long as it happened between two unmarried people, there was no stigma attached. Virginity also didn't have the same religious significance as it did for the Romans, who placed female virginity next to godliness and considered sexual restraint a virtue. Ancient Egyptian myth didn't concern itself with the biology of human birth to create its gods and goddesses. According to the cosmology, the first god, Adam, arose out of nothing, essentially creating himself from a pool of primordial ooze. Then got to work on making the world, but first he masturbated. Immediately afterward, he spat the god Shu and the goddess Tefnut out of his mouth, and they, in turn, created more gods and goddesses and more aspects of civilization. Ancient Egyptians saw the masturbation part of this story as critical, so male self-pleasure took on an almost divine element. There are even accounts of pharaohs ceremonially masturbating into the Nile. Unlike ancient Romans, The ancient Egyptians weren't particularly progressive when it came to dirty pictures. Some erotic imagery did exist, though, the most famous example being the Turin erotic papyrus, which contained a series of sexual vignettes. Measuring 8.5 feet long and 10 inches high, 2/3 of the papyrus depicts a disheveled man having intercourse with a young woman. It illustrates different positions, each one more bold and creative than the next, including one of the couple going at it in an improbable configuration on a chariot. Many experts think the Turin erotic papyrus was the ancient Egyptians' idea of satire, not something they saw as legitimately sexy or intended for the purposes of arousal. The resurrection of Osiris is a classic in ancient Egyptian mythology. It is also the first known record of fellatio in history. The god Seth kills his brother Osiris and chops him into pieces, but their sister, Isis, reassembles the disparate parts in hopes of resurrecting Osiris. There's just one problem. His penis is missing. So Isis fashions a new penis out of clay and blows into it, and the action brings Osiris back from the dead. Ancient Egyptians had a unique understanding of semen and where it originated. Though semen plays a lofty and spiritual role in many of their myths, Egyptians thought the spine was the part of the body that produced this hallowed substance. Specifically, they thought it came from a holy vertebra in the spinal column. And this perspective endured as accepted fact for years afterward. Even Plato believed it, calling semen a soft flow from the spine. The ancient Egyptian myth of Seth and Horus has a uniquely sexual component, one that relates to the culture's larger beliefs about sex, fecundity, origins, and power. In the myth, Seth and Horus, gods with a contentious relationship, lie resting, and Seth attempts to penetrate Horus. If the other gods were to find out Horus had been on the receiving end of that coupling, they would shun him, so Horus's mother, Isis, intervenes. Horus catches Seth's semen in his hand before it can enter his body and throws it into the river. Then, Isis takes Horus's semen and spreads it over some lettuce, which she feeds to Seth. Because of this deception, the gods decide it was Horus who penetrated Seth, not the other way around, and look negatively upon the latter. Eventually, Horus becomes the king of Egypt. So look at that, dreams do come true. We hope you enjoyed learning about ancient Egyptians and how they were as freaky as they come. Tune in next time to OnlyFacts, and don't forget to subscribe.